Trump heads to Asia where concerns are growing over possible war with North Korea. President Trump departed Washington on Friday for his first visit to Asia, a 12-day swing through 5 countries that comes as the once unthinkable has become a palpable concern from Tokyo to Seoul to Beijing, a war with a nuclear-armed North Korea. Trump's escalating rhetoric and Pyongyang's accelerating weapons programs have set the region on edge and prompted National Security Advisor HR McMaster to declare this week that the world is running out of time to stop the North. North Korea is a threat to the entire world, McMaster told reporters at the White House. Trump's trip, with bilateral visits to Japan, South Korea and China and stops at regional summits in Vietnam and the Philippines, could go a long way toward determining the success of his administration's policy. Aides said they are committed to applying maximum pressure on Pyongyang to head off its nuclear threat and resolve the situation peacefully. Senior White House aides said Trump's top priority on the longest overseas trip of any president since George H. W. Bush in 1991 will be to build on the initial success his administration has had in rallying international support for isolating North Korea. Responding to pressure from the United States, the United Nations Security Council approved 2 rounds of stiffer economic sanctions and a growing number of countries have severed diplomatic ties with Pyongyang and banished North Korean guest workers. But beyond the sanctions and the silent treatment looms the very real prospect that none of these tactics, employed to varying degrees by previous administrations, will convince North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un to veer from his pursuit of a nuclear weapon that can reliably reach the U.S. mainland, a goal analysts said would sharply tilt the leverage in his favor in any future negotiations. That raises the question being privately assessed and publicly debated across Northeast Asia: how real are Trump's threats of using military options to prevent Kim from succeeding? I think the Chinese are divided on the seriousness of President Trump about the potential of a U.S. military strike, said Bonnie Glaser, a China analyst at the Center for Strategic and International Studies who visited Beijing last week. Some say President Trump is unpredictable and that he could launch a preventative or a preemptive attack. They worry the situation is getting out of control. Other experts think Trump is bluffing to scare Beijing into greater pressure on Kim. Glaser added, I sense more of the former view. There's more seriousness about the considerations being taken by the Trump administration. What to look for during Trump's landmark Asia trip? In Tokyo, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe raised eyebrows during a gathering of international foreign policy experts last week when he acknowledged there is some worry about applying that much pressure on North Korea and whether this will lead to war. The Japanese leader, whose governing Liberal Democratic Party emerged stronger last month after winning more parliament seats in a snap election, emphasized that his administration fully supports Trump's position that direct diplomatic talks with the Pyongyang are not worthwhile given Kim's consistent provocations. Of course, I do not wish for a conflict, Abe said at the Mount Fuji dialogue. However, dialogue with North Korea for the sake of dialogue is meaningless. In Seoul, Trump's handling of the North Korea crisis has led to a number of angry public protests ahead of his arrival, and widespread confusion and apprehension over his intentions. President Moon Jae-in's administration, which came to power this year advocating for a more open policy toward the North that favored talks, has sought to align more closely with the United States in the wake of Kim's increased nuclear and ballistic missile tests. But Moon's aides objected to White House proposals that Trump visit the heavily guarded demilitarized zone that divides North and South Korea over fears that his rhetoric would further inflame tensions at a time when the South is preparing to play host to the Winter Olympics early next year. Trump has threatened that Pyongyang would feel the fire and fury of the U.S. military if it continued its threats, and the president pledged to totally destroy the North if necessary during a speech at the United Nations in September. The White House agreed to have Trump instead visit Camp Humphreys, a joint U.S.-South Korea military base south of Seoul. But at recent protests, South Koreans waved signs that superimposed the American leader over nuclear explosions. President Trump is frequently making ludicrous comments implying war, said Han Sun-bum, a representative of one of the largest protest groups, the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. His comments, coupled